Hey, guys. Altavis Pelzer here, your voice manager. And I unmute the voice of women who are ready to speak up about what has kept her silent for way too long. I'm excited about this episode for a couple of different reasons. For one, we know how powerful the mind is, but we don't always tap into how powerful and strong the mind is for many different reasons. Some because they don't really see it as an asset. For others, they don't know how to really tap into it. So we're going to tap into a few different things with today's discussion. And I want you to definitely go to a whole nother level. Why? Things have changed. We know 2020 definitely does not look the way that you thought it was going to look. It definitely does not look like your vision board, but that's okay because you can still make 2020 a very successful year. And with that being said, I want to say hello to my guest. Hello, Wayne. How are you today?
Altavis, I am wonderful. I've been looking forward to this. How nice to see you.
Oh, it's a pleasure. The pleasure is all mine. I'm excited about this conversation because of what it can do for so many people. I think this is that conversation that's going to kind of unlock a few prison doors for people and set them right for 2020. So with that being said, let the studio audience know a little bit about yourself, and then we'll dive into today's topic.
Well, thanks. My name is Wayne McFarland, and I wrote a book called Tales from the Day. An unsolicited plug. I love it when I do that. Available on Amazon. Sorry. Anyway, I was an entrepreneur my whole life, and among other things. And then, not at the end of my life, but when we sold our business, I decided that I like to read. So I started doing a lot of reading, particularly memoirs and biographies, to see what other people had been through. And I read a lot of memoirs just in a sitting or two. And both of these, I got to tell you, they really suck. I mean, it really, I was kind of horrified, you know. The memoirs were all along the vein of, I stood and gazed at the mountains and said, there is my destiny. And I strove after it, blah, blah. And I thought, life doesn't happen like that. Life is a series of vignettes and episodes, and you started something you've waiting your whole life to do, and suddenly there's a virus. I mean, that's the way that life works. So I thought, well, and to the horror of my publisher and the rest of it, I said, I'm going to write a book that's a series of short stories, such things as Pitching the Loan Shark, or Johnny Cash hitting on my wife, or roping a bear. And each chapter is going to be a kind of a standalone. And the powers that be were horrified. They said, no one's going to read that. You got to have a starting and an end, and scantily clad people is always a help, and then have an ending and blah, blah. I just said, no, I don't think that's the way things really work. And as it turns out, you know, we live in an era of blogs now and of 150 character communications. And it turned out that the reception was, and I'm very gratified and a bit overwhelmed, but it was very positive. So, and I found that my business background, being an entrepreneur, led itself to a couple of stories. There's one here called The Day We Triggered the Doomsday Code, and which is about people that were trying to steal our products without paying for them, and other stuff. And so everything you do in your life affects it. So that's where I came from, and that's why I wrote the book. Oh, here it goes. Tales from the Day. Yes.
I absolutely love that.
I'm embarrassing myself, but I love it.
Not at all, because when we think about it, life is a series of unfortunate events. It's a series of different things, kind of.
And ultimately, I tell people today's catastrophe is tomorrow's great story.
Exactly. And so being able to look at things in that light, has that always been how you looked at life? Whereas it was, okay, well, you know what? We can flip that. We can do something different with that. And I don't have to live by anybody else's standard when I do it.
Yeah, you know, that really is true. And it's one of the reasons I've been looking forward so much to being on your show, is that, most of it, I think, if you really want to get involved with stuff, you just have to get out there. And, I've had people ask me, one of the chapters is how we lost 10 grand at the Hollywood sign. And they said, how did you get involved with that? And I realized that pretty much the story of my life, and I'll bet yours too, and a lot of your audiences, people come to you and say, hey, why don't you do a blog? You've never done a blog, but you go, yeah, good idea, right? And so you go ahead and do it. And generally, it has a few more potholes on the road to success than you might have anticipated. But without taking a run at it, if you're not in the arena, you can't win the fight.
That part right there, is that everybody talks about, the fear of getting started, the fear.
Yeah.
The getting started shouldn't be the part that you fear.
It's down the road. Yes.
Down the road. If the getting started, that's the easy part. Go ahead and get started. You get started 15 times if you have to. That's the easy part. It's the part further down the line where you're looking and you're like, why did I get started?
I was just going to drain the swamp where'd all the alligators come from, Yeah.
Exactly. Oh my goodness. And so, man, when you think about the journey in entrepreneurship, there is no straight line.
No, absolutely correct.
There's no straight line. And one of the biggest things that I love is that networking allows us to, we can't control where the line goes, but networking allows us to put some barriers around where we go with the line, so we don't draw too far out the line. We can still tell what the bigger picture is. And so who is it that you've been able to network with in this journey that has really allowed you to kind of open up yourself to new opportunities?
Well, in this particular case, now that as I say, I are an author, most of it came from a couple of things. I've been asked, what was the best way of meeting great people and publicizing what you're doing, finding out if people think you're full of nonsense or not. And my answer to that would be to be on blogs like yours. And there's a group out there called Radio Broadcasters List that is comprised of great folks like yourself who are looking for people to interview. And then, of course, you have to tell them who you are and what you're doing and see if anybody cares, And the other part of it is I've been asked in terms of entrepreneurship or doing things new, that you run into things where it just looks like a disaster. And as I tell people, I learned over the years that you can have a disaster on Monday. Well, I noticed I didn't say Tuesday because it's Tuesday. You can have a disaster on Monday and go to bed and wake up in the morning and it's okay. It's all okay. That was one of the most amazing things to me. So what I tell people is just day to day, try not to let it get you down, because tomorrow, truly, I don't want to be a Pollyanna here, but the next day, can truly everything can be fine. There's a general who I admire a lot who led the troops in World War II, and one time a reporter like yourself asked him, how did you bear it? Sending all those troops out, knowing a lot of them were going to die and all the problems, how did you bear it? And he said, I woke up one day at 3 a.m. and I realized that most of my problems never really happened. And I thought, there you go. Yeah. And so if I have any advice to offer, that's probably it.
Now that's eye-opening right now, because we know that when it comes to the mind, we're creative. We are a lot more creative than what we think.
Yep.
And, in our minds, we won't leave a full-time job to do entrepreneurship, because as soon as we walk out the door, we won't have health insurance and an eagle is going to swoop down and get it. We come up with this extravagant reason for why we won't do something.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of times it's just things that are in our head.
Yeah, and that you're absolutely right. Most of the barriers that you have, not all, but most, are your own self-doubts, and it's hard. It's hard, to leave the comfort of, as a friend of mine jokes, leave the comfort of your mom's basement and go out in the world. I mean, I'm not picking on millennials or anybody. It's just that you get into a zone where it's kind of like being in a soft terry cloth, and leaving that it's hard. It's frightening. And the good news is once you get out there and cope with a bit of it, you wonder why you didn't do it sooner. But
that part.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had that feeling quite a few times. It's like, why did you wait so long?
Yeah.
Why did you wait so long? Oh my goodness, that part. So now we have to take a step back. What is this story about the Hollywood sign?
Well, I think it kind of illustrates what we're talking about. I'd run away from a farm in the Midwest and ended up in California, and we were doing little. They were kind of like slideshows, advertisements for businesses that they'd run at trade shows and stuff. So one day my phone rings, and this person says, they asked if it was me. I said, yeah. I said, are you the one with the lasers? I said, yeah. And he said, well, we have the contract to run the searchlights at the end of the live television production of the reopening of the Hollywood sign. And we're thinking we need lasers and we want you to be our guy. Ultimately, I thought, Hollywood, I have arrived. I had visions of confetti and groupies and autographs and so I said, well, sure. And there's no power at the Hollywood sign. It's on top of Mount Lee, it's called. And all my lasers were out. We were doing stuff with them. So I borrowed a couple of lasers, which they're worth about, I don't know, 20 grand or something, and they each have kind of like, at the time, a big glass tube in them where the lasing would take place, and they're really sensitive. If they were too hot or too cold, they'd blow up, and each one of those little tubes was $5,000. So we begged, borrowed, and stealed, and I promised people screen credit that I had no right to offer. This was being done by CBS, live to half the country, tape delayed to the other half of the country. Now, Altadis, it never sleets in Southern California, but it sleeted that night. And so we're up there on top of the Hollywood sign, and there was a live show with the star in it. Her name was Lola Falana, who I never met, but I love her. And the reason is she not only has her own song, What Lola Wants, Lola Gets, but she won a percentage of a baseball team in a baccarat game and then sold it for $14 million. How could you not love a woman like that? I mean, and she gave a show, it just took your breath away. So now comes our turn, and the sleep begins. And the manager does the old, okay, live in 5, 4, and I'm going, yeah, Lord. And so we fired up our first laser. It was sleeting on it. It blew up instantly. So my wife and I, we'd only been married like a couple of months. Here we are at the Hollywood sign, right? So we're holding umbrellas over the second one, and it sent out a couple of beams, and then it blew up. So the end of the evening consisted of my wife and I sitting under the giant H on the Hollywood sign, the same one an actress by the name of Peg Entwistle had jumped off of to her death. And Gloria and I were sitting there, and I said, well, we just tanked in front of about 20 million people, but tomorrow we get paid. So the next day rolled around. By the way, the view from the Hollywood sign is really quite spectacular. And so the next day I called up the production company because, we were broke. We had begged, borrowed, and stolen everything we could do. So I called up the production company and I said, I'd like to drive down and pick up my check. And the person answering the phone started laughing and said, well, good luck with that. They just declared bankruptcy. So the punchline is I was sitting at my desk. I had my head in my hands, probably weeping. And Gloria, my wife, comes in and says, you have got to see this. And she's holding the LA Times paper. It's paper then. And there was a review in there shrieking away about us positively. The lasers flashed in the Southern California sky, blah, blah. And what had happened was when it started to sleet, everybody, the reporters, everybody went to the trailer where there was an open bar. And they all got hammered. And then when the Hollywood sign was unveiled, the company that hired us went bankrupt. Their searchlights were what they saw, and they took a picture of it and said it was our lasers. And I've got to tell you, it was the best review I ever got. And all that kind of work we did. And got us a lot of business and a lot of hype and a lot of coverage. And we never did anything. So there's
now that is epic. Oh my goodness. Talk about a story.
Yeah, and believe me, I thought it was the biggest disaster of my life, and it turned out to be one of the best things ever.
Wow. I'm sure that they look back and go, yeah, we weren't ready.
No. We had no business taking that on. We had no business doing it. I mean, we hadn't been doing live TV. We didn't know anything about anything. But it was the Hollywood sign. So how could you say no?
Oh, it's an interesting point that you just made, because one of the things that I found, especially coming into entrepreneurship, coming into speaking, coming into, that first couple years of being the author, we tend to say no to bigger opportunities and yes to the smaller ones.
Good for you. That's absolutely true. Good for you. Yeah,
it's crazy because it's still battling that fear, but it takes the same amount of energy for you to say yes to the bigger opportunity that it does that you say yes to the smaller one. So I might as well jump big, and see where I land, as opposed to just jumping small and being safe.
That's it. And I had a production manager one time. We got involved with another bit of strangeness, and where there was a bunch of equipment involved and there were some problems. And he looked at me and said, "Look, we got two choices here. We can either just bag this and we know it'll fail because we won't do it, or we can take a run at it, and if we fail, it'll be spectacular." So I thought, okay, yeah, that makes sense, So.
Fail big. Fail big, but fail forward. There you go.
That's it.
Now, I know you've shared already a couple of moments where you kind of look back and man, things, you look back at it and now you're like, okay, I can see the positive in it now, but in the midst of it, man, it wasn't positive at all. And I know that you said that your wife, she's been alongside of you in this journey. Has she had moments where she looked at you and she just said, okay, now, Wayne, you've gone way off the beaten path?
Well, shortly after we got married, she got enrolled at Caltech. She was getting her doctorate in molecular biology. I mean, Altadis, my plane doesn't fly up there. I mean, and so she kind of had her own thing going, although you're right, she used to really roll her eyes and go, what are you doing? And I remember one night, to show the difference between us, she's a scientist, and so stuck to what she was doing. And we got invited to this party, this real Hollywood party. I mean, people there that you recognize. You didn't remember their name, but you knew they were somebody, So anyway, this singer comes in. He had to be in his mid-40s or whatever. And he had this young 17-year-old lady on his arm who was dressed like a Chinese mandarin covered in rhinestones. So we're leaving this party and we're driving home, and Gloria said, "What do you think of the party?" I said, "Well, I'm okay." And she said, listen, when you think that a 45-year-old guy squiring a 17-year-old in a mandarin's outfit covered with rhinestones is normal, you've been doing this too long already.
I would have to agree with her on that one. Like,
yeah, no, this is not quite, no. So that was it. My one big Hollywood party.
I love it. I love it. This has been an amazing conversation between the two of us. And I love what you've been able to do. And so when you put out the first book, that was when?
Well, Tales, I've been writing in various articles for things like Ozzy, which is a great publication, and others. And I started reading them over, and I realized what I was doing really was writing this book. And so I wrote this, and then from my experience of getting a book published, I wrote a book called You're an Author, Don't Get Hustled. And just from my experience. And that one, along with Tales from the Day. Oh, Here It Goes Again is also available on Amazon. I mean, the hits just keep on coming, you know? So if you're thinking about writing something, believe me, the field out there is full of hundreds of sharks, and they'll all promise you they'll make your book a bestseller and make you rich. And what they're really promising you is they'll empty your bank account. So I wrote this little book about it, and just things to watch out for. So from somebody who's unfortunately been there on that one.
Yeah, I think a lot of people coming into the industry, they deal with that pain and that fear of being double-crossed, of somebody saying that they're promising they can do something and not being able to really level up to what it is they said they could do. But, you know, one of the biggest lessons that we learn through that is that you got to keep coming back. You gotta keep moving, and you can't allow it to distract you or to deter you from having that next conversation, having that next person that you connect with, because you never know where that relationship is going to take you or your books. You never know who's going to read one of your books, and we're in an era now where books are being turned into movies and shows on Netflix and on Hulu, and so you never know who's going to know who and can take you to that next level.
I'll bet it's like you running this blog too, which is doing quite well. I'll bet you get offers by the dozen about, we'll make your blog an international success and you'll be rich and this and that. Just write us a check for $1,000 or something and we'll take it from there. I'll bet it's the same way for you.
Oh yeah. Just write us a check for, 10 grand and we'll handle everything for you. And I'm like,
I don't think so.
Not quite. Sounds good. No. Because then it's not authentically me. I see, for me, like doing the podcast, doing the blogging, that's authentically me. I love this.
Yeah.
This is a joy for me. So then when I put it into somebody else's hands, they have to send it out with that same amount of joy, or it's not going to be worth it.
Yeah, good for you. That's absolutely true. That's the essence of, in my view, of creativity. Whether you're doing a podcast, you're writing music, whatever you're doing, you got to have some joy in it. Got to have some pleasure in it. It'll come through. So
now, out of everything that you've written so far, what is your favorite book?
I would have to say it's the one we're discussing, pretty much, Tales from the Day, and notice how I just slid that in there. And the one probably that I think does the most good for up-and-coming authors is the Are You an Author, Don't Get Hustled? Because in there are just a bunch of stuff that new authors trying to get published are going to run into. And all of them are schemes to, as it's said, fatten the eagle and slim the wallet.
Oh my goodness, thank you for that. Coming in, Speakeasy podcast listeners, you guys understand that we always have, authors and speakers, entrepreneurs, business owners. Listen, we have had 6 and 7 figure CEOs on the show.
Yeah.
Why? Because I want you to understand that the journey, it may not look exactly the same, but the most important piece is that you keep going and you attain the resources you need for you to be able to make it to that finish line. And then don't stop there.
Yep. Good for you.
Yeah, don't stop there. Keep going. And I know, Wayne, so how many more books are you going to write, though?
Well, I originally put Tales from the Day out there with 19 kind of stories or chapters in it. And then I decided, well, I'll do another book. And I wrote another 8 chapters. And I thought, I've squeezed that lemon dry. I mean, I can't, it's my own personality, but I'm not the kind of writer who can, I don't want to say invent, but create a totally fictional story. Especially in a vignette form. So I stopped. There's times too, you got to know when to hold them, you got to know when to fold them, And so I added those chapters to the original book. And so now it has 27 chapters, and I felt that's a wrap, And so I honestly have been thinking about trying my hand at more of a humorous whodunit and see how that goes. So, but I think in terms of my tales from the day, I've pretty much told them, and you shouldn't try and invent more. If you don't have them already, don't try it. At least for me. Don't try it.
No, that definitely makes sense. You write from where you are. Yep. At some point you move forward into another genre. We always tell authors and especially entrepreneurs, you have so many life experiences that you can write about.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
It kind of runs the gambit. You can write about everything from the beginning to the middle to what you're doing right now. Yeah. And it'll all be relevant to someone.
Yep. I certainly hope so.
Well, Wayne, I definitely appreciate you being on the show today. Let everyone know how they can reach out to you for more information about what it is that you do, and then also how they can connect with you online and find the books.
Great. Fantastic. Yes. Here's a shocker, a website. It's WayneMcFarland.com. And the bonus of going there is not only you can connect with me there, but my picture is there. I mean, what more could you want, right? And so again, that's WayneMcFarland.com, and there's links there to take you to Amazon to buy the book and stuff. So, but thanks for asking. That's nice.
Most definitely. So guys, don't just get the book though. One of the things that I always find when it comes to our wonderful readers is that they get the book, but then they don't leave a review. We want to know your feedback. That's how we know that we're doing a good job. We want to know what you felt about the book. So definitely connect with Wayne. Wherever you can find him, go to his website. You can connect with him online, but leave a review. When you get the book and read the book, connect with him, leave a review, let him know how you felt about the book. Speakeasy podcast listeners, we appreciate and applaud you. Why? Because without the Speakeasy listeners, there would be no Speakeasy podcast. We definitely are moving and shaking, and the things that you got in this episode today will definitely kind of motivate you and move you forward as we go into the second half of 2020. That part, with all of the wonderful things that could possibly happen. I saw someone to a post and they said, at this point, Godzilla wouldn't really be too far off. So yeah.
I tell my friends I'd say what more could happen, but I'm afraid.
Because there's
I don't want to hear the answer. Yeah.
There's definitely other things that could possibly happen at this point. Mothra and Godzilla could come out. We just don't know at this point. So we're preparing for the long haul. With that being said, thank you guys for checking out another episode of the Speakeasy Podcast. Be sure to share it out, let us know how this episode resonated with you. And until next time, guys, don't forget to press it out. See ya.
Thanks.